All right. Well, just decided to pick on conversations about development. Development in socionics. Is it possible, or are you just a static box that can't go anywhere? This is sometimes a comment that gets thrown around. Um, you know, and every time I hear it, I just feel like it's somebody who doesn't know shit about socionics. So, how do I want to do this? Let me see. How do I want to? Whatever. We'll look at it this way then. So normally, we're talking about development within socionics. To make it real simple, one of the things to do is to just focus on the mobilized, which, wow, so this is what happens when you kind of use, mm, let's call it number 6, because now that I'm looking at this has it written as activating, and then this over here is mobilizing, and that should be backwards. So number 6, okay, here, this is normally the thing we like to say is that you're going to grow into. So why? Where is all this thought process coming from? Well, first off, if you're going to grow into something, if you want to get good at something, you need to first value it. It has to be something you value. What are the things that you're valuing in socionics? Well, here, okay, the first two, you value these, you don't value these, and then you value these over here. This is actually kind of annoying. These terms are flipped around. But whatever, you value these here, okay, and then you don't value these. Since you don't value certain things, why would you want to grow into it? Okay, that's the thought process there. If I don't care about it, then why would I really work at trying to make it any better? How is it really going to get any better? You know? So to get better, we need to first value it. We need to care about wanting to make it better and put some kind of thought or effort into it. The second thing is here, this guy, number 6, okay, normally referred to as mobilizing. This is so annoying. Okay, it's two-dimensional, which is better than the suggestive, which is only one-dimensional, implying that there's more room for you to actually grow here. You're able to actually be better aware of this. You're able to put some kind of effort into it and just do more. So you can at times look pretty good. You can actually get pretty decent enough that if someone is observing you, they might start to really notice this function here sticking out more, where it's not as likely here with one dimensional. Now, a lot of times in the talking to somebody, typing somebody, okay, real world type of stuff, you may encounter that you're hearing them talk a lot about this 6th function here. Okay, they're bringing it up as something that they're always looking to do, that they want to get better in. They felt they weren't good at it when they were younger, and now they're good at it, or they're better at it, or whatever. Um, Sometimes I've even found in the real world that they seem like they're talking about this more than they're talking about their ego functions up here, which you think that's kind of weird, right? But it does seem to happen. Why might that happen? Well, these top ego functions are something that a person's like, yeah, I've always been pretty good at it. It's not that big of a concern. So it's not something I'm thinking about that much. I just don't worry about it. I just go about my business and do it, whatever. But here, these are things that I have had issues in. I've had painful experiences, I've had problems, whatever. So it is very much on my mind that I want to get better here. I gotta check this now. Hold on. See what the comments are here. I gotta back up. What's SE mobilizing for me? I'll show it. Okay. Generally for LIEs, one of the ways is often very much described is that LIEs are kind of like your typical nerds. Let's put it this way, simple language. Typical NT nerds are very knowledgeable. They're probably known for that. They're really good at certain areas of knowledge, okay, that they're just interested in. Where they kind of suck maybe is that they feel like they're not very good athletes, that they're not very good at asserting themselves, at being tough, maybe feel like they were bullied a little bit. And another way is to feel like they're kind of tired of being just a nerd and dealing in theoretical or just bookish stuff, and they now want to get more active in the world, in the physical world, make a real impact in the world, do something impactful and be recognized for it. Especially that last part, do something and be impactful in the world. um, that's one good way of looking at it. I think that's one that would resonate with me. I look towards making real impact on things. I don't like the idea of just getting knowledge for the sake of knowledge, and you're very smart and you want to have nerdy conversations with people all day long, but it feels like you're never actually putting it into action. You're never doing anything with it. That's annoying to me. So that's one of the differences really for like LIEs in particular. They want to be useful. It's kind of gammas are doing this in general. They want to make an impact. They want to do something. So you'll see that more with LIEs. They'll talk about it in that way. Some stereotypes have been thrown around when it comes to the SE mobilized can be getting into more active like sports, getting into maybe some jobs or things now that become a lot more physical, more active. Some literal cliches are getting interested in like combat things, weapons, martial arts, stuff like that. Toughen themselves up, assert themselves more, things like that. Those are some classic stereotypes. Even in something as simple as working out, starting to be somebody who takes their workouts more seriously, they're putting on some muscle, becoming an athlete, that kind of thing. So yeah, and pretty much I checked the box on like just about all that shit I just mentioned. What's going on here? Do I think the attitudes differ? In theory, I would say no, it should be about the same. In theory, but I'm open to the possibility of there could be some kind of a difference. Then it's going to require us to kind of like talk it out, have a lot of different discussions, and see what that difference really is going to be. What's this going to look like? And now we might have to deal with 4 different kinds of differences, because maybe now we're dealing with differences in how the alpha is going to look at it, how our beta is going to look at it, how our deltas and gammas and so on. So that's probably an area of research there, let's call it. And LIE men, yeah, especially the more physical stuff, the more combative stuff, yeah, I would say so. Makes all the sense in the world. I would still imagine that what is universal for both genders is that both of them are going to want to become more assertive and impactful in the world, taking on a bigger position, a bigger role, starting your own business, maybe. That's another one, right? Having the initiative and the drive to get out there on your own. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be my own boss now. And I'm going to assume those risks and challenges of being the boss now, and everything kind of being on me. And being in a leadership position where now I have to tell people what to do, and I have to kind of like push them around and this and that. I think those traits right there I just mentioned would be all very SE mobilized, kind of growing, kind of developing into that. And it should be universal, regardless of gender. Alrighty. Now, something I wanted to bring up when it comes to the development, this stuff here, okay, the mental ring, which is these four up here, okay, the mental ring stuff, these are all things that should be very public, let's call it. So people around you can kind of see this. They should be able to see these strengths and weaknesses popping up. They should be able to see your base. They should be able to see the creative, possibly. Creative comes and goes a little bit, but they should be able to see that you seem pretty good at this. They should also notice that this super ego block, you suck. Should be fairly obvious to everybody, right? When you move down to the vital ring, this stuff is more private. It's more within you, in your head. You're aware of it, but maybe other people are not so aware of this. They can't quite see it for themselves. So that's all important, because when we're talking about development, there's a good chance that the areas that you want to develop are in these areas that other people may not notice that you're developing there. They may not realize that. They may not realize that this is an area that you want to develop in, that you actually feel is important to you. But you're aware of it. That's something I think is important, especially if we're talking about typing people, or you're looking at a celebrity or something like that, whatever. You should be able to notice these strong ego areas. Hopefully you'll notice the super ego. You might not have noticed these things down here, the vital ring stuff as well, particularly the super it. Okay, that's one where you might have to track them over time. You have to look at their history, their biography. You know, what were they always good at? What were they not good at? Where did they always seem to be confident and strong? And what were the areas that they kind of grew into? They started using it more, and eventually they got pretty good at it, and it started to really surface a lot, right? Does the person mention it? Just flat out tell you, hey, I didn't feel like I was that good in those things, and I got better. An example that comes to mind, it's been talked about a little bit and people gone back and forth. So typing someone like a Winston Churchill SLE, ESTP. When people look at Winston Churchill, for example, everybody will notice that he was pushy, shovey, he was assertive, he was in seeking of power, eventually became prime minister. So we can see all of the SE and TI stuff coming out. He's known for it. It's his claim to fame. That's what you would expect from the ego block. What you have to look at a little bit deeper to notice is that in his private life, his personal life, he would paint, he would do more poetry, things like that, which was more of that beta NF side was coming out. But it was private. You have to actually read upon this individual. You have to be a pretty good historian to notice those things, to pay attention to that. Otherwise, all you're ever going to hear is about him being prime minister and him standing there with a cigar and a Tommy gun, right? That kind of stuff. General Patton, American commander, Second World War. Patton, another guy who was known as old blood and guts, tough, assertive, impulsive commander. Below that, he was deeply passionate about poetry, about reincarnation, symbolic stuff, all that other stuff, showing the other half of his quadrant, the beta NF stuff, right? Alexander the Great, same kind of shit, exactly the same stuff. All three of them SLEs, all three of them known for conquering and being tough, being leaders, and also eventually known for having that NF poetic side to them too. These are all examples of how we should be able to see the mental ring stuff that they're always good at. And over time, these individuals grew into the vital ring stuff. Check out the comments here. Let me see what's going on. Got to bounce back and forth. What about SI polar? What's that like? Assuming for me, SI polar, I've seen this brought up a couple different ways. The one that makes the most sense to me that I've noticed is this difference between the abstract intuition stuff versus the day-to-day sensing stuff, especially with SI polar. So it's about day-to-day things and awareness, keeping track of the things in your environment, keeping track of what needs to be done, daily tasks. Um, it's almost like being very conscientious, feels like. That's sort of how I choose to look at it. And I would say that I'm not good in those areas at all. The thing I take issue with, I don't like this concept that SI polar is always somebody that can't take care of themselves physically, and they're going to be clumsy, and they're going to be breaking and smashing themselves constantly, stubbing their toe on the chair, doing weird athletic stuff to the point where they have to be in the hospital. I think some LIEs might do that because there's some people who have such terrible interoception. It's almost like they're at the point of like clinical medical condition, like if you're that fucking bad. But there are others that are not physically that uncoordinated and that unaware of themselves. So I don't particularly buy that part. So anyhow, yeah, that's how I like to look at it. A lot of the day-to-day things that need to get done and taking care of yourself, things that SI dominant types are paying attention to and are good at. These are areas that an LIE may just not focus on at all. They just don't care. They just can't be bothered. Okay, hold on. Let's see. What else? You mostly certainly develop are the role and mobilizing, particularly because one provides to society and the other provides for something you want to grow in. Yeah. And both role and mobilizing are two-dimensional functions. So you have more capability in them. The role is also something you're looking at this like, okay, I need to kind of produce something here, and I have to get it done. Society wants me to get it done, so I got to do this. There's some incentive there for you to try to get better. Mobilized, you actually want to get better. We can also get better at things we don't like or value if we do them all the time. Yeah, and this is just going to kind of bring me into, I guess let's call it phase 2 of this conversation. Oh my goodness, it's picking up. Okay, getting the things we don't value any other time. This is where people get into the idea of like, what's development? How are we developing? There's two parts of that. One could be thinking of development like I am going to actively create a workout program for myself so that I can improve a particular function. I can improve that element in that spot, like doing bicep curls for your whatever element you want to improve. As though you're going to try to transform it from a one-dimensional to a three-dimensional, or you're trying to improve it somehow. Another way to think of development, which I find is more applicable, it's more useful, is thinking of it in terms of just happiness. How we are happy. This vital ring down here, getting better in this area, performing better, doing things in this particular place, is more likely to make us happy. We feel better. We feel proud of ourselves because we are improving in these areas that are usually something we believe we're weak at and we're not good at. It's fulfilling that other half of ourselves, if you will. When it comes to the idea of development, to me, that's the more important part. Doing these areas that you're feeling happy. I'm feeling happy to be doing things and improving in the areas that I was never that good at, or I wanted to be better, or whatever. I find that's the better way to look at the development component. Hold on, let's see what else now we have going on. placement, yeah, whatever. That if you don't value them, you use them, which gives you less. You rarely use them, which gives you less time to experience. Right. So if you don't value them, you're just not paying much attention to them, and you don't give a shit anyway. So how good are you really going to get at it? But life has a way of teaching us, right? So just by living, in a sense, by having experiences, by failing, trial and error, we can get better at anything. We can improve them in some way. This is, of course, going to be better if you actually care and you're paying more attention to that particular element. You want to get better. Oh, I love it. The arguments are breaking out already. Be a certain in which we have to engage in certain ways, regardless of what we would prefer to do instead. Yeah, yeah, you could see that. When is all this? Oh boy. Okay. All right. Where was I? I don't recall. Anyway, so development stuff. I was talking about the two different ways of looking at it. Again, I'm not crazy about this way of looking at things. Like I want to develop a particular area that I suck at, but I'm going to do some kind of a training program as if I'm going to get that area better and make it on par with my base element or my ego block element or something like that. I think it's just not possible. You would just become a whole different personality at that point. And you wouldn't want to. What do I mean by that? If you value a particular thing, whatever is in your ego stack, so let's say whatever your TE, your TE base. Well, you value TE. You really value it. That is the cornerstone of your personality. That's what you're doing. That's how you want to look at stuff. You're not going to want to transform yourself into somehow being awesome at TI or FE, right? It's not what's important to you. You're not going to want to do that. You just don't want to transform that. It's like you're trying to kill what you are to grow into becoming something else totally. You're just not going to want to do that. So you can improve some of the lower, weaker functions a little bit more, but how much more? Realistically, how much better are you going to get at them becomes the question. Exactly to what level of development are you trying to go? So there are other systems that like to talk about that kind of stuff a lot. That development, like you're going to make a workout program. I don't. Good luck. But in terms of what makes you happy, what makes you feel more fulfilled, what makes you feel more accomplished on a deeper personal level, that's worrying about the vital ring. That's worrying about now mobilized and the suggestive, being able to do those things more, to become more competent in it, to surround yourself with people who are good in those areas, particularly suggestive, that can help you along. And now we've gotten into the topic of duality and things like that. How can TE polar individuals make better impressions with TE DOMs? By using TE. I should put that on the screen. TE polar individuals make better impressions with TE DOMs by actually using the fucking thing. That's usually the problem. And in truth, I think most of the time, it's just not going to work. It's just not. You just have to accept the fact that there are certain types you're going to struggle with. Now, what can help is when you have both people involved are aware So you have a TE Dom with someone who's TE polar, and they're both aware of who they are. They're aware of where they stand. And now they can learn to work around that. They can learn to see things from the other person's point of view. TE Dom can kind of go, you know what, there's no point in slamming you constantly for not using TE. I know that you use the damn thing. So it's just counterproductive. Why would I bother? And vice versa. It's having that understanding for the other person. If you're TE polar, being aware the TE Dom person is going to get kind of annoyed and incensed from time to time because you're not using TE. That's it. It's just understanding of each other. That's how you can help work with each other. Factual, actually. Pretend you give a shit about the way a TE suggestive person would. Yeah, if you want to pretend. Yeah, and sometimes by leaving. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I really think the answer to the question overall, just any type, it's just about, you have to have the understanding. I understand what your type is. I understand who you are and what you're about. You understand what I am, what I'm about. And now, based on that, we can begin to understand why these issues happen and maybe not get so frustrated and so jumpy when someone's shortcoming, let's call it that, pops up, right? I think that's really the best way to do that. Yeah, why would you want to make an impression on a type who's leading with your polar? I've noticed this too. This is one of those areas that, you're Yomenakage? Yomenakage? I don't know how you pronounce that. I've noticed this a lot too. If you're talking about an IEI, a lot of times they don't care about TE stuff. They just don't care. So even if you engage in an argument about this, a lot of times they'll just sit there and be like, what does this matter? Like, who cares what the facts of the thing are? What it doesn't matter that that's how that thing is supposedly used. I'm saying this. I don't, Here's an interesting one. I saw this earlier today. Pops up a lot. Couple people debating, arguing on something, and then you see somebody who is TE Dom, they're an LIE, and they were comment about saying, oh no, that's not how that thing is used. That's not how it pops up. According to this particular thing, et cetera, et cetera. This is how it works. This is what goes on. This is the evidence. Then somebody else counters that by saying, well, it looks to me like you're just some TE person who's outsourcing their thinking to someone else. The takeaway there is somebody is making this argument like, oh, you're outsourcing your thinking. You're not thinking for yourself. You're listening to someone else's bullshit. So you're an idiot, is kind of the implication there. To a TE person, they might look at that other one and go, no, dumbass. According to all the evidence, according to everybody who's anybody, they all agree that this is how it's done. This is the way of it. Now, if you want to stand there on your high horse and you think you're doing your own thinking and that somehow makes you better, instead of listening to what actually is proven to work, then you go right ahead. And I've seen that kind of argument, those things pop up a lot. That even sounds a lot like I've seen that kind of shit happen between like LIEs and IEIs as well as LII. Anyway, LIIs and IEIs can do that kind of stuff a lot. Both can be types that really like to hammer down on this very theoretical thinking themselves. I'm doing my own deep analysis on my own, and I've come to this conclusion and this truth. And that somehow is more important and more profound than whatever anyone else has to say, or any other researcher, or anybody with any degree or whatever. Okay, TE person's like, all right, yeah, fine. You're just a moron sitting on a couch thinking to yourself, and you somehow think that your opinion overrides everyone else's or all the evidence. So notice that kind of stuff. Is it even an argument against facts? Yeah. And the example I was giving, basically, someone's pointing out, here are the facts. Here is how people have seen it. And look, there's evidence to it. And someone's like, yeah, you're exporting your thinking. Uh-huh. I'm showing you what the facts are, and you're saying that this is like I'm exporting my thinking instead of thinking for myself. You know, that's the implication kind of being thrown in there. And a lot of times in these cases, I'm using an example I saw earlier today in a discussion, and this was not me, by the way, but I know some of the people that were involved, and I've seen that happen a lot, particularly like an IEI or an LII arguing with some TE type. Could be an LSE, could be an LIE, whatever. And you see this kind of shit happen. And it's a values thing is the problem. Usually some of these others are thinking of it in terms of, well, this is what I thought of. This is my thought process. My thought process is great. I value that. So I'm not bothering to pay much attention to what others are saying. And I'm going to trivialize that by saying something like, well, you're just, you're giving away your thinking to someone else or whatever the fuck. That's just the cope. It's a cope to kind of like disregard that kind of shit. What's going on over here? I think it's possible the strong functions developed as a defense for the weaker ones, like a positive to counter the negative. Strong functions developed as defense for the weaker ones. I'm going to have to ponder this one a little bit and how I'd like to approach that. You do see some aspects of this kind of thing happen a lot. There's talk sometimes of how like the mobilized function, for example, can be used to deflect and defend issues that may pop up with the suggestive function, for example. Mobilized being stronger, suggestive being weaker, and then you kind of get hit on that weaker suggestive function, so you kind of overuse that mobilized a little bit. It's a little bit of a theory, it's a talk there, so I have to think about that. DCNH. I liked how Timur said this thing, the DCNH shows development. Maybe, but unfortunately nobody really understands Model G as evidenced by the World Socionics Facebook page. Just look at the latest posts on all that, and you see that pretty unanimously everybody's like, whatever, nobody gets Model G anyway. So yes, they can. It's quite common. It's common, in fact. This is one of those that if you want to go wander onto like what wiki Socion, and you can look up a lot of different write-ups on LIEs, you'll see a lot of that being talked about. For once, it's an area where I'm a little more lenient with Galenko. I think he also talks about LIEs can be pretty relaxed and funny and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and particularly with close friends, people they like, stuff like that, because of the FI component. They're among people that they like more. They're among people they're more comfortable with, where they can really kind of like be themselves. LIEs are going to get kind of weird when they're dealing more with people that they're uncomfortable with. Like they can kind of tell this is not my scene. This is not my kind of type of people. That's when they may try to censor themselves and they may try to behave appropriately. And in doing so, that's probably where they're going to look more like a robot and come across looking worse. But once they feel like they don't have to worry about that anymore, they can just kind of be themselves. They can be a lot funnier, a lot more interesting. Well, now this is interesting. Yeah, this is very IEI sounding. I suppose you could have an SEI, could say something like this, but more IEI, especially this whole like there's something else going on in the background that can't be explained. This sounds like the NI, but this is kind of an area where one could make the claim that like NI has gotten a little out of control because it feels the need that it has to go looking for something else. There must be something deeper. There must be something more that I have to go look for, something hidden that I have to find. And sometimes there isn't. It's just, it is what it is, right fucking there, you know? And all this looking around is a waste of time. The first step, I would say, is you just have to be mindful of yourself. You're already showing that you're aware that you have this tendency. So that's the first step. You realize that there could be a problem here. And in order to fix a problem, I'm going to need to know that there is a problem. So you got to be mindful of this. Dealing with whatever, how would you improve on this? There's always of course, basic like dualities, having other people around you who are better with the TE stuff, who can do well in that, and at the same time convince you of it. Someone that you can trust. That's usually the best way around this kind of thing. One of the other areas is normally this is why you can think of a lot of the socionic stuff. It's sociology. So it's almost like societal engineering, putting people in certain places where they belong, because that's just where they fit better. And this is kind of a reason why like an IEI or beta NFs in particular do great in certain academic or very philosophical kinds of environments and things like that, where they can sit around thinking about the deeper underlying meanings behind stuff. It can be kind of hard in certain engineering or certain other areas that it's like it's just data, facts, acting on what's in front of you, whatever. It could be really hard for IEIs. Sure, none of that sounded all that satisfactory to you, but it really is knowing that this is a weakness of yours and maybe finding someone around you that can comfort you with, hey, this is just what it is. It's just the facts, man. Like there isn't that much more to it, and somehow prove it to you, which is probably going to be an SLE or an LSI maybe, or something like that, typically. Can EIIs like FE interactions? Yeah, of course. To me, it's kind of like saying, can an EII enjoy going to a concert where there's a whole lot of emotion and people going crazy and shit? Like, yeah, they can get into that mood and emotionality of things. So yeah, they can. And in fact, they can sometimes do it too, by the way. Like if needed for some reason, some job or some situation or whatever's happening, and an EII feels like they have to go into FE mode and create a mood and an environment and that kind of stuff, they can do it. They won't do it for long. They were not. It just doesn't interest them to do it for long. This is not a high energy type, so they can do it for a little while. And by a little while, I mean 30 minutes, maybe an hour, something like that. And that's kind of about it. Yes, but again, nobody's, well, I'm not going to say nobody, because there are people who like Model G. So obviously not nobody. But for a lot of people, this just doesn't mean anything. Model A information metabolism, Model G energy metabolism. Yeah, whatever. There's a lot of people who say Model A has plenty of energy stuff going on in there too. And a lot of Model G just doesn't seem to be useful in any way. Or worse, it looks like it contradicts stuff going on in Model A. So like, what the fuck is the point? So this is back to what I was telling you before. I'm not against people trying to teach Model G. Go ahead, teach Model G. Problem is, there's nobody good who's teaching Model G out there. My hat's off to Ben Vazelin. He tried. He's tried. And I respect him for trying. I respect anybody who tries. The man in the arena, anybody who throws their hat in the arena and tries, I respect you for it. But he didn't get very far on trying to really explain Model G in a convincing way. Just didn't. And the evidence shows, because you can see how many people are kind of like not really fans of Model G. Model G shows that the mobilizing and ignoring have minimal energy. I guess it does. I don't know. EIIs have minimal energy for FE. Yeah, I kind of agree with this. Again, it's kind of what I was saying earlier. If you throw a EII in a very FE kind of heavy thing, they can play along for a little while, and then that's it. Do you need Model G to really say that? I might as well get rid of this. Like, let's just stop that shit. Do you really need Model G to kind of demonstrate that? No, not really. I mean, within Model A, it already tells you that FE is going to be ignored by the EIIs. They don't really care about it. It's ignored. It's like whatever. Why are you going to put a lot of energy and put a lot of time into FE if you ignore it, if you don't care about it, if it's unvalued? So it kind of becomes obvious. And I think for most people, if you hang around EIIs and look at them for a while, like, you can see that they don't do the FE thing very much. Again, there has to be a reason why they feel that they have to engage in it to do it. More of the same. FE drains, EIIs. Yeah, whatever. An LSI friend that helps a lot with the TE data, because I end up either too gullible or too distrusting of stuff. Thanks for the advice. I appreciate it a lot. Yeah, again, this is where the socionics stuff talks about. And I know that my channel is predominantly socionics, so obviously I'm talking socionics. And socionics is not the end all be all, right? There's other systems out there that are useful for different purposes. I'm very much aware of a lot of them. In fact, I'll have to talk more about a few of them in another video, maybe. Kiersey stuff and all this other shit. But with socionics, this is a big part of it. It's the socializing and the interactions between different types and trying to explain, like, why. Anyway, and the different interactions between them and why. Like, why is that a thing? So normally you're going to communicate better with other people of your quadra You'll be more trusting of them. They're able to communicate and relay information in a way that makes more sense to you, which is therefore going to make you more willing to trust them, more open to them. So if you're beta, EII, you're going to be a lot more receptive to dealing with SLEs and LSIs. And the LSIs and SLEs are the ones that are going to be good at just raw information, data, stuff like that, being very practical. Let's see. Oh, darn, my music is fucking it up. All right. All right. By your duals, Model A says that the mobilizing is mobilized by your duals creative, so it agrees with Model G that it has minimal energy. Oh, how? So it agrees with Model G that it has minimal energy. Okay. I'm not seeing the connection there. But even if I were, isn't this more evidence to say that Model A and Model G are basically the same shit? So why bother with Model G? Yeah, at the end of the day, that's true. All of these are theoretical models. So if you don't like it or it doesn't work for you or you don't see any purpose to it, then fuck it. Why use it, right? There's nothing that stops you from using multiple models too, depending on what you want to use it for. Again, I like Helen Fisher's personality stuff a lot. And I like Helen Fisher's stuff, not DCNH, which I know is, people are going to say it's the same. It's trying to use Fisher. Yeah, blah, blah. No, it's not. I like Fisher's model more, what it was intended to do. I like the way that she words things better, all that stuff. So I prefer to just think of her stuff as is. But her stuff is better used for a whole different thing, dating, romantics, things like that. So use whatever system works. Disregard what doesn't fucking work. How would you compare FE ignoring to suggestive? Slightly confused between SLI and EII at the moment, but I'm leaning towards EII. Well, that's interesting. Wait a second here. So how would you compare FE ignoring to suggestive? I'm assuming that's not SLI and EII because SLI does not have FE suggestive. Perhaps it's a typo. You're trying to refer to FE as polar. I'm going to assume that that's what's going on there. At the moment, but I'm leaning towards EII. Well, first, I would approach this more like what's in the ego block. Are you really SI dominant? Are you really a sensing type that is very focused on getting things done, being very practical? Somebody who really, I mean, again, very pragmatic kind of individual. And usually SLI is somebody that is going to struggle in the feeling arena. They're going to struggle more with interpersonal relationships with people a bit. SLI is more likely to have a lot of problems in the FE department, showing emotion, being enthusiastic, or displaying a lot of heavy emotion of any sort. Creating those kind of environments for other people, getting along with large groups of people, being the center of attention, things of that, all that kind of stuff. They're usually going to struggle heavily with that. And they want to get better at the interpersonal relation, the FI. They see it as a weak spot. They're trying to do. Somebody who really portrayed a wonderful textbook example of SLI was a recent typing that's online there that Jack did not too long ago on a guy named Jan. Jan something or something Jan, something like that, whatever. It's very recent. That guy was typed SLI, and that guy is like, I mean, textbook SLI. It's perfect, perfect. Um, and you can hear with that particular guy talking about the FI stuff, that's something he's trying to get better at, that he's kind of realizing, I want to do more with my FI, getting close to certain people, particularly romantic relationships. But he talks about it like it's a painful thing, like it's a bit of a, he's gingerly kind of like trying to work on it and get around it. It's kind of cute in a way. Um, yeah, and usually in EII, these aren't areas that they struggle in. They don't sound like they're concerned with it, with that feeling stuff at all. They manage it well. For the EIIs, it's usually the other way around. EIs are going to have more issues with like imposter syndrome, executive decision making stuff, being pragmatic and getting things done, even day-to-day things, getting it done. They can typically have a lot more problems in those areas. So a lot to go in there. Let me see. Yeah, he does. He does. It's a raging hard on. It's a raging hard on. But hey, listen, again, Jared, go for it, bro. I support you. Start your own channel or a big ass blog post if that's what you're more comfortable with. Whatever. Personally, I prefer a channel because I like this kind of interactive. But whatever, and give lectures and stuff, and you might convince people. You might get us to understand things that we're not understanding. So go for it. How to FE polar manifest itself in social. There's a few ways. So some of the most simplistic ways, okay, could be someone who doesn't seem to be showing a lot of emotion in social situations when they should. Everyone else is around you is having a certain kind of emotion, excitement, anger, sadness, crying, and you're just not on board with it at all. You're just not. You're kind of roboting there, right? So you, in a simple way, we can look at it as just not being very expressive. But another way that's important could be that you're very much aware of the mood, the atmosphere, but you just don't really care very much to get involved in it. You're like, something I find, which would probably apply to FE polars a lot. Uh, I see this in politics or in commercial advertisements sometimes, where they're trying to get you to be interested in something, vote a certain way, whatever, and they're playing at your heartstrings. They're doing a commercial, or a politician is speaking to you on an emotional level. They're trying to get you to feel passionately about a thing and get motivated, whatever. And as an FE polar person, you may notice what they're doing and you're just like not impressed. You're like, I don't care. That doesn't mean shit to me. Tell me the facts. Tell me what you're actually going to do about it. What's your real plan? Give me the analysis, the dispassionate analysis. I don't give a shit about all this heavy feeling. All right. It's just not a good live stream unless it freezes like a couple times, right? Just makes you look more official that way. So anyway, the FE polar manifest. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Again, it's an interesting discussion. The whole polar function stuff. Um, as I mentioned it before, there's levels to this. There's some people that are in the extreme, like they have no idea. They don't see it. They don't get it. Wow. And there's other people who say like, look, I see it. I get it. I just don't give a shit, and I don't use it, and I don't feel like how to distinguish between ESE and EII. Ooh, well, I mean, there's a lot of differences going on there for starters. One, quadra values. Um, Always has to be brought up. What's the point of quadra values in the end? I mean, forget about all the stereotypes of this quadra values, this or that. Bottom line is, quadra values, you're going to see four different elements that the individual is displaying that they seem to care about, they seem to value. It's bottom line. That's it at its simplest thing. So ESE and EI are going to value some different things, particularly TE and FI versus FE and TI. That's one way to distinguish them. ESE is going to be usually a lot more social, a lot more outgoing, a lot more emotive in particular, really expressive a lot more, creating a good social environment for other people. Kind of like being a good host is one of those nicknames, Um, very outgoing kind of person. EIIs, no. EIs can be a pretty introverted, reclusive sometimes. Others can be a little bit more sociable, but never to the extent of an ESE. And as I was talking about this earlier, EIIs will show some emotion. They'll be FEing, but they can't sustain it for very long. They just don't want to. They don't care. Whereas an ESE can be sustaining good vibes, feeling tone, all this kind of stuff for all day long. They could just keep it going. Perfect. They found the interview. Yeah, for the guy Jen. Yeah. Um, I got to start putting some of my own interviews up here. Again, it's important to put interviews, good interviews, bad interviews, shitty, whatever, so that it acts like an encyclopedia for people, a reference point, let's call it. Um, but if you go through World Socionics page, Jack stuff, he's got a few SLIs on there. Jan was the most recent one, and he was just such an obvious one. Um, there's another one, another older interview a few years ago. Um, can't remember the guy's name. Um, who's SLI, but a little less stereotypical SLI. What's going on here? There's some dichotomies I've written down: efficiency versus perfectionism, aggression versus reactiveness, subjective, I guess, versus objective. Okay. Dynamic versus static. Second one is like delta versus beta. Third one, I feel like TI versus FE. Okay. I mean, it sounds like you're creating your own system for yourself. Go for it. Who knows? Maybe it could add to certain things. There's plenty of people trying to work on some of those Renin dichotomies, those later Renin dichotomies, like static and no, not static and dynamic, like carefree, strategic, tactical, all that kind of shit in the back. It's messy. Even Renin himself said you shouldn't use it to type people. It's not an exact science like that. So I hate it when people forget that. I can't stand it when people just they forget that shit and they continue to use those dichotomies as if it's the way to initially type. It drives me absolutely bonkers crazy. It makes me want to beat them to death. um, Again, you know what? I'm curious. I'll hear it out. What it has to say. Model G showing this adaptation thing. Sounds weird because that would basically be an LIE going into their super ego, which is like why they would suck at it and they wouldn't want. So I don't know about that. Now you could say with Model A interpretation that it's just role FE. LIEs can develop that role function, that FE can get better. I would say in my case, it's probably one of the things that makes me kind of look weird to people, even to myself, because my role FE is probably a hell of a lot better than a lot of LIEs, I would say. And you might ask why. When I say, well, I've been in a shitload of social things throughout my entire life, including I was in theater for like 5 years or so on, like seriously, even professional stuff. So you're doing a lot of social stuff like that, it's going to improve your social game a lot more. Let's see, I'm the latter. I forgot which one I was doing. It's latter and former. But I think this is the EII. You're not good at the day-to-day stuff, being practical, getting shit done, all that kind of stuff. I think that's kind of how that was. Right? Or did I get this confused? I don't know. Talking a lot here. You self-type when you feel like your super id block isn't that weak. Wow, this is like more EII versus SLI stuff. I don't know why I'm surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, actually. So anyway, to me, all this would make sense in that I could see this being a problem for all the quadras, all of them. So what do I mean by that? There's a difference between theory and what the theoretical model precisely states about each little element and whatever versus what we see in reality. Okay, real world, it's different. It can be a lot easier to see someone in reality and identify the quadra they belong to. What are the things they seem to value? Okay, we can tell you value these kinds of elements, so it's easy to identify you based on the quadrant. You're one of these quadrants. From there, sometimes it can be easy to tell, okay, you're an extroverted type within that quadrant, or you're an introverted type within that quadrant. But then, like, this is just real world stuff. There are some people who will even say that they just kind of like to look at people as a quadra. Like the quadra is your type. Rowan LaPlante used to say that kind of stuff. And I get where he's coming from. I like that thinking a little bit. So at least in your case, you know your delta and you know you're one of the introverted deltas. I've often had this problem myself, to be honest, where it's I've looked at it and I go, okay, I'm gamma. I'm pretty sure fucking gamma, extroverted gamma. So now I'm stuck between two extroverted gammas. Which one now seems more appropriate and so on? Let's look at the history and stuff. It can be an issue. But nonetheless, you should be able to look at your past and your history and everything else and kind of go, you know what? Which are the things that I'm known for to be better at? What are the things people would say I'm actually better at? We know you're good in these areas. We know that this is what you do well. And these are the other areas that maybe you feel internally that you've gotten good at it. That doesn't mean everyone else would agree that you're actually good in those areas. Like, I think that's one helpful way of doing it. Especially with self-typing. And self-typing can be really a pain in the ass because we can get caught up in our own feelings about a thing and it's not objectively accurate. We'll sit there and say, well, I feel like I'm really good in this thing. Yeah, you feel like it. That doesn't mean the rest of us agree with you. That's where self-typing become a problem, and you're going to need some input from outside opinions. Hopefully that helps a little bit. What are your thoughts on typing sessions? Okay, overall, I would say I like them. I am for typing sessions. I think we need to have more of them. I also need to get on board with this and start contributing more typing sessions, putting them online, because I see it as full encyclopedia, if you will. It helps to test out some of the theories and put it into reality. So I think that's very helpful on those kind of things. Typing sessions have some issues. First and foremost, who is the one doing the typing? I believe that typing is a skill. Interviewing people, analyzing what is being said, it's a skill. Not everybody can do it. Like everything else. Not everybody can be an astronaut. Not everybody can play baseball. Not everybody can be an artist. Some people are talented in certain areas and some people suck. So it depends who is doing the typing. And so those people typing have more credibility than others. Yeah. But I like a lot of the typing sessions. I think it serves as a great learning point for everyone. The person typing, the person being typed, people observing. There's a lot of things that can be learned about the type, the personality, and what they actually look and sound like in reality, and learning about what things work and don't work in the real world when you're trying to type somebody. You got to get away from the theoretical model and understand what theories don't work well and what work well. So, yeah, there's a lot to be said there. What's the subtype that doesn't give a shit about others' moods? ILITE or ILINI? Well, this first off, it's just funny because it's an ILI. You're like, ILI usually just don't give a fuck anyway. But probably the TE. The TE one would probably be worse. Because TE and FE are opposites of each other. You can't TE and FE at the same time. You can't really, there's mutually exclusive. So if you're doing if you're heavy TE, then you're probably not giving a about FE. Yeah, I've been struggling with that too. Yeah. Like I said, lots of struggles with this. This is going to be a thing. In my point of view, in the real world, there's going to be a lot of people who can get to their quadra and figure the quadra out, and then maybe get to a point where they're like, I'm on the extroverted side or I'm on the introverted side or whatever. And now they're stuck between what would be called activating pairs, or they're stuck between mirrors, or they're stuck between stuff like that. This is an issue that many people are working. What's his name? Ibrahim Tencer on his blog has a nice little list on this, on like trying to help differentiate between types. It's a little bit, how should I word this? It's like speaking of the types in general, looking at the in general differences between them, but it's still helpful to look at. I had to link that in here. He's another good go-to guy that knows a lot about socionics. He's been at this for a very long time too. So I got to throw him in there. So shout out to Ibrahim Tencer for doing great, noble work. Alrighty. Because I find any tend to give people benefit of the doubt. Yes, that's true. I'm not sure what this is in reference to, but yeah. This is where the delta NFs, very good at being empathetic, sympathetic, putting themselves in people's shoes, looking for possibilities and alternatives, all that kind of stuff. Makes them great counselors, really great people. They excel heavily in that arena. How does FE role manifest? I'm pretty sure I'm gamma quadrant. I'm thinking it might be LIE. How does it role manifest? LIEs, again, so the basics, right? It's two-dimensional, it's there, whatever. It can grow, it can become better. It's not something you're ever really going to be known for. It's not like people are going to say, wow, that guy is phenomenal at dealing with people and he's so emotional and sensitive and inspirational emotionally. No, but it can get better. You can improve with experiences. So depending on your life experiences and what you do, where you put yourself out, you can get better at understanding the situation, what's going on, how should I react and respond, what's working emotionally, on other people's feelings and stuff like that. You can get better in those areas. There's always a debate of how much better, right? What the hell is 2D? What is 2D? What is 1D? What is that, right? All that really matters is that this is something you're going to be kind of mediocre at. You can kind of do well in some cases, but then in other cases, you're not going to do well. Because this is role, it's unvalued. So it's something that you're not terribly concerned with at the end of the day. You know, if you come across poorly or some things don't work, you might go, oh, well, fuck. Yeah, it didn't come out right. Whatever. I'm not going to lose sleep over. Or even bland. It's unvalued. So that's something you need to be looking for. Is this something I really care about that much or not? How am I coming across to people and so on? Do I really give a shit that much? I would also look into the block as a whole. So super id block for an LIE, the SIFE stuff, alpha quadra stuff, caring and being good at providing a nice, feel good social environment, taking care of others and making sure that they all feel good and so on. How important is any of that shit to you? That's something to keep in mind. And then which part is failing more, the FE or the SI? What is this? I can't relate to weak TE, but can't relate to weak any either. Back to what I was saying before, though. I've noticed this as well. You're referring to the creative and suggestive functions, which are both flexible. They can adjust to various things. So I've noticed this with some people. I've noticed it myself, where it feels like you can identify with the base and the mobilized. You're very much aware of them, and you're aware that they are an important part of your personality. And you feel like the more flexible positions, like creative and suggestive, can be a little bit, you can doubt yourself and kind of really wonder about it a lot. How do you feel about the demonstrative? So for SLI, that would be TI. And for EII, that would be NI. Me too. Maybe stereotypes are wrong. Yeah. See, it's important that it's common. It's common to have these kind of doubts. Like I said, I have these kind of doubts of myself. I'm just keeping it real. I sometimes wonder about this shit, like, and then I have to go talk to people a little bit, and they look at me like, "Are you fucking out of your mind? Like, you are not that good in that area as you think you are." Like, oh, well, oops. If you look at FE, then it's a whole lot stronger in EII than SLI, so should not be too hard to distinguish. Ask a friend. Yep, I agree. I agree with this. It's a good practical thing. This is kind of coming back to how we in our own heads can feel a certain way about ourselves and overestimate certain things, and we have to kind of put our own little subjective feelings aside And ask some people around us. They'll look at us and go, "Dude, your feeling stuff is not great. It's not. You kind of act like a pet rock." Tell my poor SLIs out there. Oh boy. Thoughts on Ibrahim Tencer? Well, the fact that he is a Sagittarius, he likes long walks on a beach, and he likes to hold hands. I love him a lot. It's fantastic. Yeah. Thoughts on Ibrahim Tencer? Well, on his work and what he's got, I'd say he's pretty damn good. He's pretty damn good. I'd say he's a very respectable source. Let's put it that way. He's one of those characters out there that if he says something, I'm going to listen attentively. Let's put it that way. It doesn't mean I agree with what some of these people say sometimes. I don't automatically accept it. But there are some people that I hold higher confidence, let's call it, than others. Ibrahim is one of those kinds of people. So that's what I would say about that. He's another interesting character that really, there's a number of these people that are super into theoretical shit. They get very mathy and coming up with all kinds of geometrical analysis of how all these things are going to interact with one another, and it gets kind of like, wow, good lord. But nonetheless, yeah, he's one of those guys that I respect his opinion on things a lot. What is this? Types that don't give a shit about T are always drawn to Model G. You know what? I agree with this. Yes, I agree with it. I would love to just start collecting data, statistics, and going, yeah, look how many LII seem to just love Model G. I would love to, but it sure as shit feels this way. Model G people just don't give a fuck about TE stuff. And no amount of evidence or whatever you throw at them, they don't care. It's not gonna sway them. They're gonna stick with it. They're just gonna ignore what you're saying. EII is an MBTI, INFP, SLI is an MBTI, ISTP, all EI value. What? All EIs, value carpentry. Are you? Is that backwards? Did you mean to say that backwards? Okay. That's weird. I would an ISTP in MBTI, right, or an SLI valuing carpentry. Probably, I think most of us would agree that SLIs are very likely to be into shit like carpentry. Yeah, high probability. But EIIs being high into carpentry, that's a bit of a head scratcher there. I don't know if I buy that. Something doesn't pass the smell test there. Yeah, now we're getting into naming issues and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Listen, I'm on board with the people who just want to come up with the universal naming systems. Either stick with the Socionics names, 3 letters, or go with the universal stuff like FENE. Yeah, that's it. We got it. We're good. Instead of all this confusion of going back and forth and having to retranslate shit for people all the time. It's an annoying argument. Yes, very important. That's where when things get pan-Jungian, it just becomes annoying. Socionics defines things quite differently than MBTI. So right under the foundations are quite different, and things get messed up after that. So fuck it, just pick your system and stick with it. You know, worded like this, I would say yes, LSEs can be forward thinking. LSEs are very results focused, um, just kind of a TE thing in general. What did we do? Was it productive? Did it achieve the goals? And did we do it in an effective, an efficient way, or was it a chaotic, fucked up way that could have been done better? Right. That's very TE. Um, I would say LSEs are going to be forward thinking in terms in very very practical ways. So you could say they're forward thinking in terms of this is the career path I'm on, this is where I want to go, this is what I'm going to do to get there, etc. Right? I'm thinking about my career, my future, and so on. Or this is the family environment I want to have, whatever. Right? These are the goals that I'm after. They're in the future, and I want to pursue them. Yeah. Okay. In that context, yes. In fact, in that way, I would say LSEs are probably even better than LIEs, actually. Just because I think LIEs can struggle at being as down to earth and productive. They can be a little too much of like your typical NT bullshitting around with abstractions or nerdy shit that is never going to get anywhere. It's not really very practical. Galenko and the Eastern Europeans. Again, Eastern Europeans is a shitload of people, and a lot of them don't agree with each other. Many of them even argue against Galenko and dislike a lot of the Galenko stuff. There's a few of them on the Facebook page for World Socionics side, and you see them fighting over this shit also. SLI nickname Craftsman, match for Kiersey's MB. Yes, but there's still there's still issues. There's some things with Kiersey that I particularly like. Kiersey showed an attentiveness to practicality when he was coming up with his book and how he went about stuff, and I like that a lot about Kiersey. My hat's off to him with that. But some of his descriptions are weak as fuck. They are super weak. They just are. His most used book, Please Understand Me Too. If you go in there and you look at some of the descriptions of certain types, like what we would call an SEE or what we would call an ESI, for example, those descriptions suck. They're very weak from how socionics would describe them. And there's a few others. There's issues within the NTs a little bit there. There's other. He does not make SJs look all that great. So there's some issues there with Kiersey's stuff. So trying to use it as a one-to-one translation is fraught with danger and almost pointless after a while. Having said all that, again, I still like certain things about Kiersey. And I would talk about him more, but I feel like a lot of people around you don't give a shit about Kiersey. What's going on? Yeah, again, this is where all the naming crap goes nuts. Really, EIIs are INFPs, what MBTI would describe as an INFP. Oh, crap. What's going on here? Things are getting kind of crazy in here. He's onto something. Okay. What did he figure out? What is he onto? Share with the rest of the class. Oh, goodness. This again. Yeah. See all this argumentative craziness going on, and people trying to wrap their minds around this or that or the. It's just like, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? Socionics got it right, and it's more organized, and has better descriptions and everything. It's just better in almost every fucking way. So just stick to Socionics. Fuck the MBTI stuff. What good is it doing you? It cares. Now look at all these arguments and stuff. Who gives a fuck? Can you post a link? Can you post a link here? Yeah, go ahead. I don't mind. Spread the love. FE dominant country. I've learned to be better at FE than most FE polars out there, so that's my added confusion. What is your FE dominant country? What country are you referring to that's so FE? Curious. Subtype DCNR. Oh, I love that. I like that. Timur from Socionica out in St. Petersburg, Russia. He likes to call it that. I like Timur. I like some of his stuff. DCNR. Anyway, my opinion on it. I feel like a lot of it is pretty redundant. It's not terribly helpful. That doesn't mean I disregard it completely. Understand? I don't throw it out completely. There is some use to it or validity to it. We can all look at certain people and say this LIE is not quite the same as that LIE, or this SLE here is not quite the same as that SLE there. We all notice these differences. Everybody is trying to come up with a way to account for that. DCNH, in a way, lines up a little bit with Helen Fisher's personality system, which I like Helen Fisher's system. And it does kind of help out a little bit. We can see certain people look a little more dominant, a little more creative, a little more, whatever. Sure. My biggest problem with the subtyping DCNH system is that it's all attached to Model G. And I question the credibility of Model G DCNH users. They tend to come up with some insane typings or really silly shit that is pointless. Like, who gives a fuck? The good when somebody was looking at Rusted Typology's girlfriend, Lilith there, who considers herself an IEI. Most people be like, yeah, IEI. And somebody was writing in there like, well, in Model G, you would be an EIE harmonizing. Well, what the fuck is the point of that anymore? She thinks of herself as an IEI. That's it. Leave it at IEI. What is this EIE harmonizing? What the fuck is the point? Just why? It starts getting into these little splitting of hairs and things that are so irrelevant and silly. So I just think it's not used very well. A moment ago, I mentioned that I value someone like Ibrahim Tencer's opinions on stuff. To me, he has high credibility, whereas some other people, especially coming out of Model G world, have low credibility, in my view, on their typings and stuff. Yeah. Some people promote it. I'm a fan of this. Look for the quadra values. I know Jack and World Socionics Society people also do that a lot. As I said before, I saw like Rowan LaPlante was somebody who pretty much almost looked at you like you're just the quadra. You didn't even, it's almost like he's not even bothering to see what type within the quadra. Yeah, look for those particular elements that the person is using a lot or throwing at you a lot, and they clearly seem to value it. Now, a lot of times you may not notice all four of them. There may be one particular value that seems to be very weak, absent, not, you just don't see it much at all. And so you're only seeing like 3. But even with 3, you can probably figure out the quadrant. Even with that, you can triangulate at that point. That's just in the real world, that happens a lot. The suggestive may not show up much. Possibly because it's something private to the person, it's in the vital ring area, and they don't feel the need to bring it up or talk about it much in any way. So it just seems a little absent. Where are we at here? On the polar level, so you probably, but we want to take you seriously. What's this? I have Galinko quoted on camera numerous times saying SLI equals MBTI ICP. Jack also agrees as a general principle. Yeah, it's fine. But again, we're in a situation where, for example, if I'm going to take the word of somebody here, I'm going to trust Jack's opinion on something a lot more than Galinko. Just damn. Jack plays to the evidence better. He articulates that evidence better and argues his position a lot better. Galinko ducks and dodges certain issues. And there's visual evidence of him doing that. Moreover, to the point of this, SLI is ISTP. Yeah, whatever. But the better argument is Socionics is just better than MBTI stuff. If it's better, then disregard the MBTI shit. What is the fucking point of it? Kick that shit down the road. Fuck it. What is this? Efficiency versus perfect dichotomy in real life, because 2 types loving getting it done. Kind of. The only thing is that you would have to be able to apply this symmetrically all along the types, or have some way of kind of demonstrating how every type kind of applies to one or the other and this and that. But I would agree that in the real world, you can see this like difference. Some people are efficient. What gets the job done quickly, least amount of effort to do it, boom, it's done. And then which types are like, no, let's take our time and make it perfect, making sure that it's done exactly right. So, yeah. Good Lord. Good for you. I need to catch up. I got to catch up. I need to start my own basketball team here, too. At least online people have typed me as FE Dom because I can turn on being expressive. I'm pretty sure people in my country would consider me socially awkward. EIIs can be awkward. They can be very into their own unique stuff. But if you're getting typed as FE Dom, I mean, that kind of implies that your FE is pretty good, or at least good enough, which would be really weird for an SLI. Great. Everybody's interested in Jared's family setup. Oh, God. Not really, because both are part of the sober ego and they're both unvalued. So in a way, when you use the word care, the type wouldn't care much about either one of them. But ability kind of shows up. Capability, usage, awareness, willingness to deal with it. When it's a role function, you're a little bit better at it, you're more capable at it, and you're more willing to use it. You realize it needs to be done. You recognize that. You recognize the need to use that particular thing to some degree. Whereas with the polar, you almost get to the point where you're so stubborn that you just will not use the damn thing. You just won't do it. Yeah, so it's almost like you could almost say the polar is the one you really don't care about. You could try wording it that way if you wanted to, but it's going to be the one that the person just really doesn't care about. They keep omitting it over and over again, even when they screw up. They maybe try to do something for the moment to deal with that screw up, but they'll just go right back to doing what they were doing. Can you life? Okay, can you live? Can you live life good without receiving subconscious function information? This feels more like a MBTI or BB kind of a thing. For socionics, like you're still aware of these functions. That's how I would see it. These different elements, you're aware of them, but you prioritize them differently and you're better at dealing with them differently. But it's not like it's in your subconscious and you're totally oblivious to it. You don't see it. You're not aware of it. Like, yeah, you're aware. And some types are more aware than others. There are some people that are just more balanced human beings, period. And then there's some people who are just more unbalanced people, period. I think objectively we've all seen that in life. So let's rephrase this question. Live a good life without dealing with those unvalued elements, right? That putting a lot of it. Yeah, you can. You're still seeing them, you're still aware of them, you're still doing something with them from time to time, but they're unvalued and you're just giving it just enough to keep moving. Yeah, again, same thing. It's just contradictory at that point to say that you're an SLI, but your FE is good enough to the point where people notice it and are pointing that out. Like either you're dealing with the most horrendous typing people ever, or your FE has got to be better than polar. It's better than that. Mm. Well, I mean, it's like, you know, it's like having to get into this now on these two elements. For the EII, NI things not difficult for you at all. Understanding where things are going through time, especially in kinds of relationships, usually. Where is this relationship going? Where is it going to go? Is this really the right one long term? Subjects you're interested in too, not just people, but sometimes certain, what's the word I want to use? Like certain topics or just interests, whatever. These are long-term things. They stand the test of time. Like you were probably interested in it from the time you were a kid and you're still interested in it even when you're 50. Like it's like they just kind of know this is what I'm all about. Yeah, long-term. EII is usually pretty darn good at that stuff too. Part of the reason EIIs can be confused for IEIs, right? They both can look like one another and, so on. Happens all the time. Because the man likes doing typology shit. Fathers can do multiple things other than just parenting. It's okay. Or maybe he's just an awesome father who can juggle all of them. It's not a big deal. Are wrong because I'm not a manic pixie dream girl? Yeah, of course. Is that more like I need to go eat. Actually, power up coffee. Here we go. Just being supportive. I realize this feels like I'm neurodiverse. No, I'm just supportive. Yeah, your IEE, the ENFP, yeah, who always gets labeled as the manic pixie dream girl type, and it's not true. IEEs, in my opinion, are a very versatile personality. They can look like a lot of things. They can be quite different. And I think SEEs, to be honest, are also another type that's very versatile. They can do a lot of shit. They can present in a lot of different ways. Um, Manic pixie dream girls can sometimes be your EIEs, especially when they're, well, I was gonna say female, but it's not true. There's people like Russell Brand who often get typed as EIEs, and he looks like a manic pixie dream girl in just male form. So, yeah. Thank you for the shout out. It's good to know I have half a brain going on. See, there you go. Man's organized. He's got his shit together. I'm just waiting for you to start your YouTube channel, bro. Seriously, I'm just being supportive. Go for it. Give me the Model G shit. Let's hear it. What's going on over here? All right, I'm about to drop off in about like 5 minutes here because it's ridiculous. Anyway, honestly, sometimes I feel so sure of my typing as IEI. Care about developing practical values. Yeah. I mean, in a way, yeah. I'm sure IEIs don't necessarily see it that way. And that's kind of important. This is where we have to remind ourselves that a lot of this typology stuff, it's very much about perspective. Who is looking at whom? Um, a lot of IEIs can get very interested in philosophical shit. So, that typing session of the guy talking about wondering, do we have free will? And free will is not a thing. And wanting to get into these arguments and discussions with people over dinner constantly, spending a lot of time on deep philosophical shit like that. People, that looks like totally impractical. It's just like, who cares? What's the point? How does this help anybody do anything? What is the value of thinking so long and deeply about such a philosophical thing that the outcome of it doesn't make any difference anyway, right? This is where certain types of people might, again, they're looking at that thing that an IEI is doing and they're just like, why? This is impractical. But an IEI might say, oh, it is practical. We're thinking about the most important thing of life, which is the meaning of life, the point of life, how to perceive life, And so to an IEI, they think this is the most important shit ever. But you can argue it's not very practical because it's not getting anything done. It's not paying any bills. It's not helping your family. It's not leading you to shit, in a tangible way at all. I feel like I just can't grasp either, no matter how much I listen to both IE descriptions. Mm-mm. Well, there's a lot to go on in here. Just by some of your comments, I'm certainly leaning towards EII more. Um, yeah, and this is where again it's all a matter of perspective, who's looking at what, and so on, right? So I know a lot of IEI types that they're not just sitting in the corner philosophizing all day long. They have a job, they're getting shit done, they're able to do stuff like that. But it's a necessity, right? We all have to do that. It's a necessity for most of us that you got to work at some point. You got to get certain things done, so you're going to find a way to do that. And I know IEIs that have jobs and make plenty of money and things like that. But it's not their focus. It's not something that they're, again, known for. They're very much interested in these more abstract concepts and things that they want to think about. That's what they like to do. Working and doing a lot of this other stuff is just a necessity. So there's a nuance here that makes a difference. In fact, that interview, again, the guy talking about free will and all that stuff, as you said in a comment, I found it laughable because it's a very common IEI thing to do, to put so much time and energy into thinking about a philosophy like that, and then wanting to really debate it as if this is the focus of their attention. That's what they really want to talk about and get into. They're known for stuff like that. I felt like as soon as I heard that in the interview, within the first 6 minutes or something, I was like, IEI, we're done. Like, yeah. I wonder how FE people would the FE in a world where they are not any people. You know what? Probably yes. They would probably talk to themselves, or they would do a Mr. Wilson and talk to a soccer ball. In a general way, yeah, it's kind of true. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing there. It just carpentry Discord. Yeah, EII is doing carpentry. I mean, I'm sure you could find one, find one early, but when you think of who's going to be interested in those kinds of hands-on skills, SLIs more often than not are doing those things and are good at it. EIIs, nope, not as common. No, you can have SLIs that are interested in abstract philosophy. Again, is this really what they're known for? Is this really what they're good at? Again, Jack also has a video typing somebody. Shit, I forgot his name a couple years back. Who he would often read some kind of more abstract stuff with a little bit of TE mixed into it. It was a little bit of like how to. It was self-helpish type of stuff he was reading. That's a little bit on the abstract territory. Bear in mind that SLIs do value they do value, different ideas and different ways of looking at stuff. They have a certain fun with that too. So they will dabble in some measure of abstract things for fun, usually. So you might likely find some SLIs who work as a carpenter, or they work as an electrician, an electrical engineer, whatever. And that's what they're good at. That's what they do. That's their life. And more on the private side, they may enjoy fiction and self-help shit, weird, some little abstract stuff. Like that's the vital rings, the more private side of them they're doing. You might have to really get close to them to hear about it or see them doing it. It's another important piece about the vital ring stuff. All right. Yeah, again, sounds very EII. They don't respond well to it. They don't like it. They don't understand. They just don't give a shit. Conflict and things like that. Okay, one last one. I asked you about the difference between ESE and EII before because if someone I hate show to me some good emotions, I will stop feeling hate towards him. If he ignoring her, is that F? Oh no, that sounds like alpha quadra shit. Yeah, that's more ESE. ESE is FE valuing, right? Base, with FI ignoring. FI deals with static, long-term attitude towards a person. So they don't really change their view of someone, their attitude of someone. In a more practical sense for this, your FI types may look at someone and go, yeah, I don't like that fucking person for this reason or that or whatever. And they pretty much kind of hold to that. You can play nice with them. You can be diplomatic. You can be polite because you have to, because it's a work environment or whatever. You just don't want to cause a fight or a scene, so you're being polite. But your opinion of that person, your view of them doesn't change much. It's pretty fixed. That's basically what FI is. If you like someone, you like them, and your attitude towards them is kind of that. If you dislike them, you don't like them, and that's kind of your attitude towards that. An NEFI or FINE delta may kind of be a little more open-minded for being too judgmental too soon. They may look to understand why the other person is the way they are, and then you kind of come to find, well, they have certain issues, and that's why they behave that way. So maybe we ought to be nice to them. Like they're kind of looking for these alternative reasons as to why that person is the way they are, and so on. That's where the NE is kicking in. But this thing that you're writing here, someone I hate. Okay, so you're already acknowledging you hate them. That's pretty strong emotion. It's a strong attitude to me. And then they show me some good emotions. I will stop feeling hate towards them. So now they're outwardly not coming across like an asshole, and they're coming across nicely to you. So now you're going to adapt and adjust, and now you're going to be nice to them too. And now you don't hate them anymore. You went from hate to not hating. It's a huge jump. This is more of an FE thing, more alpha quadra. Alphas in particular will do stuff like this. Particularly some of my FI polar types. A lot of stuff there. And will I ever do any video interviews typing people? Yes, I actually have. I have some. I got some here that I'm contemplating releasing some of them. I don't really like editing shit, as you can tell. So I just like lolly. I will do them at some point, release stuff. I'm certainly kind of refining my interviewing process because I don't want interviews to be too fucking long. And for those of you who have been typed by me or got those of you who've been typed by me on videos, you know that our conversations can last for hours. Some of you on here, well, I don't know if some of you are still on here, but there's a few on here who've done video typings, or even those of you who have done what's it called? Questionnaires. You know that I can send videos back and forth, and we can just go on and on and on. And I literally have recordings that go on for 3 hours. So, it gets kind of a little bit messy and weird when you're uploading those. But yeah, I got a few here that I think I need to throw them up there. And then watch the drama unfold. Watch the chaos. Everybody starts bickering and picking shit apart. But I need to do them, like I said. I gotta contribute that to the community. Ooh, and then things get kind of crazy. All right. Holy snap, crackle, pop. Y'all went nuts. Okay, Julius. Somebody just wrote Julius on there. Julius, yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think that's the only guy who SLI, which I agree SLI for Julius on that one. Yeah. That sounds right. That's the other dude who makes for another good SLI. There, I think he probably has a few SLIs in there as well. But those are two I remember that stand out well. The most obvious SLI was Jan, who he did very recently. I should probably do a review video on that one, actually. I haven't done my review videos in a while. So that was a really good one. Very textbook. So, okay, I'm stopping it there before I never get off. So, good chat, everybody. Until the next episode.